We spent years leading ghost tours inside Cardiff Castle, walking its long corridors after dark, after visitors were gone. We thought we knew every stone, every whisper of history hidden within those walls, until the castle started to whisper back. We've heard voices where there should be silence. We've seen shadows move across empty rooms, and we've felt something, someone, watching us from the dark. These aren't stories we've read or tales we've borrowed. They're what we've lived, what guests and staff have truly experienced, and what we've witnessed with our own eyes. Today we're taking you inside the 5 most haunted rooms in Cardiff Castle. Each one hides a story, a memory, and a presence that refuses to fade. But the number 1 room on this list, even after all these years, it still terrifies us. This is real. This is our history. This is Dark Wales Tours, and these are the top 5 most haunted rooms of Cardiff Castle. At number 5, we begin where every visitor starts their journey, the entrance hall. Not exactly a room as such anymore, but once part of the castle's grand library, and certainly worthy of a place on our list. This space was never meant to look like this. When architect William Burgess began transforming Cardiff Castle, his vision was an awe-inspiring vaulted chamber with a sweeping staircase and gallery above. But it proved one step too far. It was unfinished after 50 years, and the Bute family eventually tore it all down, replacing it with what you see today. Yet beneath its polished surface, history still lingers. Through the far recess, the Roman wall still stands, the last trace of the fortress that once enclosed the entire site. Just imagine it, Roman soldiers, medieval builders, centuries of lives crossing the same threshold. It's little wonder this area hums with ghostly energy. One of the most striking encounters happened in the 1970s. The caretaker's daughter, Lorraine, had returned late one night after a party. As she climbed the stairs, she saw a figure at the top. A young woman in a simple grey dress. Her hair was tied back, watching her in silence. Before Lorraine could speak, the figure faded into nothing. The Grey Lady, as she is known, has been seen all over the castle, and she makes her first appearance right here. But perhaps the most chilling story connected to this hall is an omen of death, known as the Hastings coach. In 1845, the Bute family inherited not only land and titles through marriage, but also a curse, it seems. For generations, the Hastings family had been haunted by the sound, and sometimes the sight, of a phantom horse-drawn coach arriving before death in the family. And so it came to Cardiff. One of the first reports dates back to 1868, when John Boyle, a cousin of the 3rd Marquess of Bute, heard the sound of a carriage drawing up outside. Moments later, he learned that a distant cousin, the 4th Marquess of Hastings, had died suddenly at the same time. The sound returned again in 1900 at the death of the 3rd Marquess himself, and once more in the 1950s, when witnesses say a majestic coach drawn by 4 horses glided silently through the castle gates. Each time, death soon followed in the Bute family. Why does the Hastings coach still return to Cardiff Castle long after the Butes moved away? Some say the experiments carried out here by the Society of Psychical Research in the 1890s stirred something that can never leave. Others say because, on paper, technically the Butes still own the castle, tied to it by a 999-year lease, and perhaps by something far older. Many guests on the tours have sworn they've heard the jingle of harnesses in the quiet of night, the distant echo of hooves that never arrive. At number 4, we step into the Banqueting Hall, the largest and grandest room in Cardiff Castle. What you see today might look centuries old, but this magnificent space is actually a William Burgess creation. The painted ceiling, carved wood and lavish details were all designed to impress, yet the stone walls around have stood since the 15th century. Long before grand feasts and royal banquets, this was a private suite, a maze of rooms once used by the Plantagenet and Tudor lords of Glamorgan. When the third Marquess and Burgess began their transformation, they tore it all apart. Walls were demolished, ceilings raised, floors lowered. The result was what we see now, a hall that celebrates the Bute family's ancestry and whispers of Welsh legend. But this room holds something else too, something Burgess never planned for. This is where the Grey Lady has been seen most often. In 1973, caretaker at the time, Derek Edwards, entered the hall late one evening. There had been a lot of filming happening that day for a movie known as Gawain and the Green Knight. The crew were all gone, the castle was empty, yet standing in the centre of the hall was a woman, pale, still, wearing grey. Derek greeted her, assuming she was part of the film crew who had returned for something, but before he could say another word, she vanished. Over the years, many others have seen her too, often in a particular doorway leading to the octagon staircase. One visitor even emailed us after a tour saying she'd seen this grey lady standing there, but behind her she saw a second figure, a man half hidden in the shadows. She said it was his eyes that terrified her. They were glowing faintly from the darkness. She actually sketched from memory what she could remember, and she sent this over to us in an email. Others have described the same thing, a lady in grey emerging from the dark, only to fade or withdraw again, as if something unseen is pulling her back. Perhaps she isn't here to frighten us at all. Perhaps she's the one who's afraid. And then there are the sounds. Not the usual creaks and groans of an old building settling, but sharper noises. A small object dropping, something tapping against the wood panelling, the faint rustle of fabric like the sweeping of a long dress, and quite often, footsteps. They start softly, growing louder as they approach the hall. They are followed on rare occasions by the unmistakable sound of a man's laughter. People have also reported strange shadowy figures moving along the far wall as we have gathered in the darkness. The Banqueting Hall may be Cardiff Castle's most magnificent room, but when the lights go out, it becomes one of its most haunted. At number 3, we move into the library, once described as the academic engine room of Cardiff Castle. But it wasn't always a library. Originally, it was the Great Hall, a central chamber of the old Tudor house. In the 1780s, it became a dining room. Then later, William Burgess transformed it into the magnificent library we see today. Where the fireplace now stands, there was once a door leading to the second Marquess of Bute's dressing room, the very place where tragedy struck. On March 18th, 1848, the second Marquess and his wife, Lady Sophia, had only recently arrived in Cardiff, bringing with them their 6-month-old son, the future third Marquess of Bute. That evening, they hosted a grand dinner at the castle. The Marquess is said to be in high spirits, discussing his ambitious plans for Cardiff's future, plans that would one day make the city a rival to Liverpool. But midway through the evening, he suddenly excused himself and retired to his dressing room. Guests were surprised. A host never left his own table. Moments later, Lady Sophia followed him, only to find her husband collapsed on the floor. He was gone, just 54 years old. A heart attack, they said. It is little wonder then that so many people believe the second Marquis of Bute never truly left Cardiff Castle. Over the years, countless people, staff, guests, even people on our tours, have spoken of an overwhelming intensity in this room. Some say they felt a sudden cold breath on the back of their necks. Others describe a tightness in the chest, as if their heart were being squeezed. Could it be that visitors are briefly feeling what he felt in his final moments? If a spirit is nearby, they can sometimes project thoughts, images, even feelings onto us, onto the living. Maybe the feelings of people having the tightness in the chest could be the second Marquis projecting what he felt in his last moments. And there's more. On several occasions, 2 apparitions have been seen, one standing in the doorway to the entrance hall, the other near the drawing room. Witnesses describe a palpable tension between them, an anger that fills the air, not directed at us, but at each other. We believe the second figure seen could be Lord James, the Marquis's younger brother. At one time, James stood to inherit everything, the land, the titles, the castle itself. But all that changed when the second Marquis and Lady Sophia had a son. The inheritance passed to the child, and James never forgave them. It seems death didn't soften that bitterness. If these sightings are to be believed, the brothers may still be here, forever locked in their resentment, with the poor unfortunate souls that visit the library caught right in the middle. Another theory says that spirits will remain because there was some kind of unfinished business in their lives, something they didn't achieve, their lives didn't go the way they wanted to. So could that be what's keeping these 2 men's spirits here, locked together in resentment? And sometimes the castle reminds us of that tension. On one of our tours, a night we will never forget, the heavy door in this very room that leads to the octagon staircase, normally firmly closed and latched, began to open and shut. It was slow, deliberate, and it happened over and over again. Everyone with us that night will remember this. Please feel free to comment below if you were there. Moments like that remind us not all history stays in the past. At number 2, we climb right to the very top of the clock tower, to the summer smoking room. In the Victorian era, rooms like this were a hallmark of high society, a retreat where gentlemen would gather after dinner. They would light their cigars, talk politics through a haze of smoke. But here in Cardiff Castle, this elegant chamber became something else entirely. It was in this very room, around the very table, that the third Marquis of Bute and members of the Society for Psychical Research conducted their experiments. They were attempts to contact the dead. They would enlist the help of famous medium Ada Goodrich Freya, who went by the more mysterious name of Miss X. The accounts are extraordinary. Miss X would sit at the table with her back to the fireplace, gazing into a crystal ball that hung from the chandelier above. The Marquis and his guests would watch as she fell into a trance, breathing slowly, calling out what she saw. Words, faces, shapes and figures. They swore that what began in the crystal soon moved into the room itself. Participants reported being touched, poked, tugged, even held down by unseen hands pressing on their shoulders, keeping them in their seats. The society called the experiments a great success. They believed they had truly made contact with the other side. But that leads to a darker question. Did they invite something in and forget to let it go? Because ever since those nights, strange things have constantly been reported throughout the castle. During our tours, guests reported being poked sharply in the back of the neck when nobody was standing behind them. Shadowy figures were seen moving along the balcony above, and most often a large man with a bushy beard has been spotted standing in the corner, watching silently, sometimes smiling, sometimes laughing. We believe we know who this could be. The description matches that of the third Marquis himself. Perhaps he has returned, not to frighten, but to observe. After all, spirits don't always haunt the place they died. They return to the places they loved. And there was nowhere he loved more than Cardiff Castle, his masterpiece. Maybe his laughter isn't sinister at all. Perhaps he's amused that even after all these years, people were still up here in this room discussing the existence of ghosts, just as he once did. But not everyone has found this place comforting. A long-serving cleaner at the time once told staff of her own terrifying experience. She'd been working at the castle for 20 years, often cleaning this room alone. Never once frightened until one day she heard a man's voice calling out. At first she thought it came from the street below, but then she heard it again, this time from the fireplace. And then, a third time, it called her name. She didn't want to hear it again. She ran down the stairs as fast as she could and told her supervisor, "I am never going back up there." And she never did. The summer smoking room, a place built for quiet conversation, now echoes with the voices of those who never left. And at number 1, the room that still unnerves us to this day, the Boot family nursery. Designed by William Burgess, this was once a cheerful space, a place of laughter and stories for the Boot children, Margaret, John, Ninian and Colum. All around the room, Burgess filled the walls with carved figures from children's tales. Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, reminders that this was meant to be a happy, innocent place. But something about this room feels very different now. It's really open these days, often kept locked to protect the antiques within. Yet staff who have entered say they found the rocking horse moving on its own, only to stop the instant someone steps in. We've seen it ourselves, twice actually, during our tours. We heard the creak, turned our torches towards it, and there it was, rocking quite violently. Not gently swaying, but really rocking. One guest had to leave the tour completely. He said it wasn't the movement that frightened him, it was the way it stopped. Not slowing, not easing to a halt, but snapping still, as if an unseen hand had caught it mid-motion. Then there's the story from the castle's security team. Many years ago, the day guard arrived for his shift and noticed the night guard sitting in his car. He was pale and shaking. When he asked what was wrong, the night guard handed him the keys and said, "That's it, I'm done, I'm never going back in that castle again." What happened to him that night still sends a shiver down our spine. During his rounds, he passed the nursery door and noticed the light spilling from underneath. Strange, he thought, because the lights had been off a little earlier. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and instantly felt the temperature drop. The air turned icy. Something was there. He switched the light off and shut the door. Before he could lock it, the light flicked back on. Then came the sound of small feet scurrying across the floor and the laughter of children. He tried again, opened the door and turned the light off, and once more it flicked on by itself. This time the laughter surrounded him, echoing from every corner of the room. He felt something rush at him, a force cold and fast, as though invisible hands were charging straight for him. He didn't wait to find out more. He ran all the way down the corridor, chased by that same laughter, and he spent the rest of the night sitting in his car, refusing to go back inside. Many people on the tours experienced strange things there too. Light taps, sudden cold spots, the feeling of something brushing past them when no one is near. Some have also heard it too, the sound of children laughing, faint and fleeting, sometimes joined by the glimpse of a small shadow darting across the room. One of the most striking accounts came from an ex-police officer who visited during a quiet daytime tour. He said the moment he entered this room, he felt that unmistakable cobweb sensation on his hand, as if something was touching or tickling him. As he turned to leave, he saw it, the outline of a child standing by the doorway, watching. Whatever lingers in this nursery seems to reveal itself only to certain people, as if it chooses who can see and hear it. When you're inside this room, it feels as though the shadows are watching, and the longer you stay, the heavier that feeling becomes. The nursery, a room once filled with laughter, now a place that reminds us just how thin the line can be between innocence and the other side. These are just a handful of the stories and experiences throughout Cardiff Castle. These are our stories, real moments, real people, real hauntings. Cardiff Castle has stood for nearly 2,000 years, layer upon layer of history, tragedy and mystery. And whether it's footsteps in the dark, whispers in empty rooms, or the echo of children's laughter, something certainly still walks these halls. We've seen it, we've heard it, and after all these years, it still makes our hearts race. Thank you so much for watching and joining us on this brief journey into the shadows. If you've ever experienced anything strange at Cardiff Castle or anywhere across Wales, please tell us in the comments below or pop us an email at darkwales@hotmail.com. We absolutely love hearing your stories as much as we love sharing ours. And if you would like us to do a deeper dive into the history of the castle, please let us know. Also remember to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to help support the channel, you can send us a super thanks or a hype. A super thank lets you tip directly on the video to keep these stories alive, and hype is YouTube's way for you to show extra love and to boost the video's reach. It really does help us grow. But most of all, as always, you just watching, commenting and sharing the mystery is the most important thing. You're keeping Wales's haunted history alive, and that means the world to us. And remember, time doesn't pass the same inside these walls. The living come and go, but the dead, they wait. And sometimes, if you stay too long, they start to wonder which side you belong to. Until next time, be careful out there.